Welcome, everybody, to another On the Blue Line podcast with Wayne Mulder. I am your host. Yes, you guessed it, Wayne Mulder. And I'm excited to be back with you again today. This is the interview room. And here I sit down on Thursday mornings and talk to someone from all different walks of life. Sometimes they're in law enforcement, but today's guest, he is not. But no matter what their background, they always have something that is actionable for us and something that can make a difference in our lives. And sometimes it's just entertaining. And a lot of today's is that. And then we end on some really high notes, so you are not going to want to miss that part of it. But first, let's get to a little housekeeping. So this is the interview room. There's also morning roll call. Comes out on Monday mornings, and it's a monologue show. It's just you and I for 15, 20 minutes. And I hope that you will check those out. Whatever platform you are listening to this podcast on, please do me a favor, and if you would subscribe. And if you are on Apple Podcast, if you would leave us a rating and review, that helps us out immensely with the algorithm. The same is true. Every episode is done in video. So please be sure to subscribe to either our YouTube or our Rumble channel, whichever you prefer. And then leaving us notes and liking the episodes on there helps as well. So I really appreciate your help with that. And the only other thing that I want to tell you about is our On the Blue Line community. That is on Facebook. It's a Facebook group, and it's really open to everybody. You just have to either be law enforcement or a law enforcement supporter. So I have a feeling that that covers just about everybody who would listen to this show. So if you haven't joined us in our closed Facebook group on the Blue Line community, all the links to all of those things I just discussed are in the show notes below. Before I tell you about this week's guest, who is Keith Malinak, I first want to mention to you that Keith is doing a special on Friday, November 11th. That is Veterans Day. So this is next week, Friday, November 11th. And it's going to be from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's going to be on his YouTube channel, At the Mic with Keith. It is a live stream event. And it is going to be in honor of veterans, and it's going to be on Veterans Day from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So there's a link below in the show notes for that. Please be sure to go to his YouTube channel. It's At the Mic with Keith, and be sure to subscribe, and then be sure to check out his live stream event on next Friday, November 11th, Veterans Day, from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you will find that these next couple episodes were actually scheduled intentionally because of Veterans Day activities that the guests are having. So this week, let me introduce you to Keith Malinak. Keith hosts the At the Mic podcast, where he has conversations with people about their lives, because as he puts it, everybody has a story. And I think that's very true. And I love the format of his podcast. He grew up in Atlanta. He is an alum of the University of Nebraska, and he spent his 25-year career in radio and television. He's worked as a producer for Glenn Beck and Blaze TV since 2009, and before then spent his career in radio markets such as Atlanta, Houston, Omaha, and Charleston. And then for his day job, he is the executive producer of Pat Gray Unleashed, which airs weekday mornings on Blaze TV and on Pluto TV, channel 465. He's married with 3 children, lives in North Texas, and his At the Mic podcast has featured interviews with guests such as talk show host Glenn Beck, legendary sportscaster Vern Lundquist from CBS Sports, and Fox News Sunday host Shannon Bream. I really enjoyed this conversation, but I will warn you, this is the longest podcast that I've released. I've had longer ones that I've recorded, but this is the longest one that I have released in its entirety. It is roughly about an hour and 35 minutes of talk time. So I give you that warning because I do hope you listen to the whole thing. But if you are short on time, at about the 45 to 50 minute mark is when we really get into his story. What really happened, if you have done what you may not know as just the listener to the podcast, is so often when we first link up with a guest to start talking to them, oftentimes we can talk for 20, 30, 40 minutes, and none of that ever gets recorded. And then you get into the meat of the interview, and that's what I piece together and give to you each and every week. Well, the way this one fell together, it kind of flowed in that natural format. So we talk about all sorts of things. We talk about the American West. We talk about hotels in Wyoming. We talk about dogs, and we talk about literally anything and everything you can think of. We do get heavily into politics, not really controversially so, but we do get into politics because that is, of course, what his day job is all about. And then we end up with some stuff that is definitely actionable for all of us in law enforcement. So, and of course, we also go over what not to do so you don't get electrocuted. That may be one of the best parts. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Without taking any more time, here's this week's guest, Keith Malinak. Well, Keith, welcome to the show.
Man, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite and looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. I'm glad we could make this happen. I think this is going to be a lot of fun, like we were just talking about off air.
Wait, hold on a second. If it's not a lot of fun, like, am I in trouble? Because that's a lot of pressure you're putting me under right out of the start. I don't appreciate that, Wayne.
That is true, but it is a good prerequisite, you know.
Okay. And by the way, this is the first, I've done a Zoom meeting before, just on my phone. I remember now, me and some high school buddies, we get together like once every 3 months, and someone sends a link and I click on it and then I hold it up to my face and I can see all them and stuff. But I've never gone through the process of downloading Zoom onto the computer. I've never been, interviewed through Zoom. I did an interview, but I don't think it was through Zoom. In other words, as ridiculous as this sounds, I truly believe that I am the last human being on earth to have Zoom on their computer and sit down and do one of these little face-to-face things. I can't remember. I did another interview. I think that was just Skype, though. Like, I am a Zoom newbie, and I hope that the video and the audio and everything's clear. So thank you for your patience today.
And the irony of that to me is the fact that you're someone, as the listeners will learn as through our conversation, who's been in radio, who's been around production, so I love that actually about you. I think that's absolutely hilarious.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, I don't get out much, man.
Well, let's start where I do with everybody. These are the get to know you questions. All right. So these are the softballs. So is it coffee or tea?
It's coffee. Yeah, every time. I grew up in the South. Sweet tea was part of the food groups that we were required to eat growing up and drink, as kids. But coffee, especially APR coffee, sponsor of my podcast. That's very good. And it's also a vessel to deliver sugar into my bloodstream when I wake up early in the morning. And wake up early in the morning, I do. So I have to have that sugar kick to kind of wake up and, go about my day.
So you're not a black coffee guy?
Yeah, straight up black coffee, just with sugar. Like
I was going to say there has to be sugar in here somewhere, Keith.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I no waitress on earth has yet to encounter me and believe the consumption of sugar that I intake. Like even like a little small McDonald's coffees.
Yeah.
Like that's 12 packs of sugar. I go through, if you're familiar with my day job, Pat Gray Unleashed, I just don't know if the camera ever catches this, but if I'm late getting my coffee doctored in the morning during that show, you might catch the canister that sits in my desk drawer that I just dump it into the coffee. And I go through one of those canisters. I don't know, Wayne, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. The next time I open up one of those, I'm going to just do little marks and see how many days it takes. But I'd say a couple weeks maybe, and I'm on to the next canister. It's a problem. It's diabetes waiting to happen. That's for sure. But so far, so good. And look, man, you do what it takes to stay awake, right?
Exactly. I was going to say, so you're saying early morning radio guys are kind of like cops in the middle of the night, very similar habits.
Yeah. I mean, and there's donuts too, constantly coming through that studio too. So yeah, there's a lot of similarities for sure.
I may have noticed some sweets this morning on Twitter. So yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that's not always coming through my world because that would be bad.
Understood, man. Understood. And that's what's so great about our listeners. They're constantly, sending us stuff, and Pat's bringing in cookies or donuts or kolaches. In fact, we do this game called Moron Trivia, and one of the call screeners on opening week, he brought in just massive amounts of donuts for everybody. And I'm like, bro, first of all, you don't need to be doing this. I appreciate it very much. But secondly, we've got enough passing through here as it is. We don't need any extra help with the sugar intake. But no, man, you're right. That studio is constantly drenched in sugar. That's for sure.
Well, I work for a major now that every time he shows up for a meeting has a box of donuts with him. And I'm like, sir, that's not going to help any of us with our physical assessment test that we have to do.
No, right? What are you doing?
So my next follow-up to the coffee and tea question is typically, do you have a favorite place to have that drink?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of chained to the desk at work during Pat Gray Unleashed. So that's typically where I have to enjoy it. Now, I will say that on the weekends, I enjoy a nice cup of coffee. On the back patio, there's about 2 weeks out of the calendar year where it's comfortable to sit outside in Texas. And so you take advantage of that 14-day window.
Yep.
So you get a couple of weekends outside. No, the back patio is nice when it's not, the summertime. But yeah, it's typically just chained to a desk at work. So
I find that answer pretty common with coffee drinkers, that on their days off, of course, we all have the run out the door for whatever our vocation is. But I find that on our days off, there's always something with coffee drinkers about just maybe it's a back patio, maybe it's by the pool, maybe it's by the water, but you just enjoy that drink of coffee first thing in the morning, enjoying the surroundings.
Yeah, it depends on the humidity, which is constantly out of control here in North Texas. But I will say that
I'm in Florida, Keith. I understand completely.
Oh, that's true. That's true. You know this. So I will say though that I typically walk down the street with my big dog Tanner on Saturday and Sunday mornings or whatever. Smartest animal ever. But like he knows, like if I'm up and out of bed, then he just rolls back over and says, "Okay, we're not going anywhere."
What breed is Tanner?
He's everything. I think he's literally got every.
More in like the lab size or what? What do we mean by big?
Medium-sized dog. I've been compared to our little Chihuahua Beagle mix, Matilda. He's the big dog. Tanner is. But so if he sees me on my phone in the morning, then he will come over there and stare at me as in like, bro, obviously you're not going to work if you're on your phone. So let's go, because I gotta go. But if I get right out of bed, and I start getting ready, he's just like, this sucks. I'm not going to be able to walk today. Anyway, and do you ever say, like, you got to be careful, say the word walk, because he may come in here and be like, bro, I heard the word, let's go, and we have a whole new language in this house, for so many words, or else game on. But anyway, what I started to say is I'll walk down the road with Tanner on a weekend morning with my coffee in hand. But I stopped doing that way. And let me tell you why. I got a little bit tired of picking up dog poop out of the neighbor's yard, right? Yeah. And in one hand, I've got a bag of dog poop. In the other hand, I've got a warm, fresh cup of coffee. And it's just like, they're just two, you don't want to cross those beams. And I just got a little bit irritating because I'd be like, I can smell. And no, the coffee waits till we come home.
What, I don't even know how to follow up on that.
Is that too much truth? Is that too much truth for Wayne?
Not at all. I love it. Well, so I have 2 Tibetan Mastiffs, so I understand the big dog thing. And same, like they'll hear me in here interviewing. And yeah, I gotta, you never know what might all of a sudden prompt them scratching on the door here because they hear the keyword or something.
That's right. That's right. And it's just, the smarter he gets, the more and more words we have to police ourselves with. It's just like, oh, don't say, like, okay, so get this. His favorite toy, it's a tire that I throw in the yard, right? And so I had to change my language. Instead of asking him if he was tired, it's now, are you sleepy? Because if you're tired, hell no, I'm not tired. Let's go play.
Yeah, let's go grab a tire.
Right, yeah. And so he hears the word. I'm telling you, man, you got to change your language when you have smart dogs in your house. You know it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're way too smart for being dogs. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and in fact, I posted a video talking about Twitter earlier. I don't know if you saw this a little bit ago, quite a while back now, I guess. Matilda had her birthday, and I sang her happy birthday. And I posted that video and showed how disinterested she was because she's Matilda and her brain's the size of a walnut at best. And she was just like, cool, thanks for the birthday song, whatever that was. We'll see. And I did not realize he was this smart. Tanner heard me singing, and Tanner knows that when we sing happy birthday to people, that what typically happens is, well, presents come after that. Because, we have people, my family lives in town and stuff, and they come over and we sing happy birthday and then open presents. And he loves tearing into the tissue paper and the bags and all that stuff, opening presents. I can help. Let me help. Look, I'll show you how to open this. So I sang that to Matilda, and he comes in here. There's a video of this on Twitter as well. He comes over here to where the dog toys are, and he's like, bro, where's the gift? It's time to play. And I want a gift in here to play with because I heard the song, the birthday song. I'm telling you, man, just whatever. I love dogs so much, man.
I love it. Yeah. The most recent one I saw with Matilda was her spying on you within the last couple of days. So
yeah. She does that. She wants to get in your lap all the time. That's what she does. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good stuff. Yeah, no, I definitely enjoy.
I'm guessing your dogs don't get in your lap much.
No, since they're the size I am. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to get to a little one.
I have selfie photos that I took with Takari, the bigger of the two. So they're both full-blood Tibetan Mastiffs, but it's really weird because one actually has the build that you'd expect higher up in the snowy mountains. So the bigger paws, the heavier coat, bigger, blockier head, and then the other one is a little bit smaller, but they're both pure-blood Mastiff. But what she'll do is she'll put her front paws up by the kitchen sink. And when she does, her head is literally just a little bit above my shoulders. So I've taken a couple selfies with the two of us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Are you familiar with that show, Modern Family? And
vaguely.
Yeah. So Jay has a little dog and stuff. And that's literally me with Matilda. Like, I never thought I would like little dogs. I used to make fun of Paris Hilton, all this stuff, Bro, if you get you a little dog, they will wrap you around their little paws. That's for sure. That happened to me, and I'm not ashamed to admit it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, Keith, you got a best or worst travel story?
Oh, definitely a worst comes to mind. When we moved from Omaha, Nebraska to Charleston, South Carolina, we rented a U-Haul. My dad and I were doing the driving, and I will spare you all the details because it will literally take up the entirety of your podcast. But I ended up typing up the story to send to my dad after the fact. I think it was like 12 or 13 page long email from Omaha to Charleston. The amount of things that went wrong in this trip. Like I remember, okay, so in Illinois, here's a few highlights, right?
Yeah.
So it was me and my dad and two cats and a carrier between us. And that was a blast. And so I remember in Illinois, it snowed so much while we were there overnight. Keep in mind, this was Illinois. Well, when we got to the U-Haul place in Charleston and it was time to unload everything into a storage unit, yeah, all the stuff, I won't say all the stuff, but a good bit of the stuff was wet because the snow had melted and gone all the way down onto furniture and stuff. What a nightmare. The cats, who are normally great travelers, decided that they wanted to be very vocal this trip. I don't know if they were trying to forewarn us of what lay ahead. But in fact, there was this one time. Now get this. This is and two more little nuggets from the story. My dad finds a cell phone in the snow while we're in Illinois. And he says, I said, where'd you get that phone, man? We've got phones. He's like, well, we may need it. I'm like, we may need it. Somebody's phone, bro. What are you doing? And so we're driving through Illinois and it starts ringing. And I'm like, give me that phone. Just chuck it out on the interstate somewhere, right? I don't want to be pinged and tracked down, thieves. Anyway, Christmas night, we are enjoying ourselves in Atlanta. And we're going to hit the road the next day. Hell, it might have been the 27th. We were going to take it easy for a while, but a snowstorm. Look this up, y'all. December of 2004. Snow is arriving in Atlanta. And I call my dad because I wasn't staying at his house. I'm like, we should probably leave now. So we did. And we got a flat tire in East Atlanta. And if you know anything about East Atlanta, it's not the place you want to get a flat tire. Both of our cell phone batteries died when we were waiting on a tow truck. The payphone was sporadic at best. The parking lot we were in, the business was gone. It was Christmas, And we look at each other and I go, you know what? Really wish we had that cell phone from Illinois right about now. So anyway, we finally get out of Atlanta. It is a harrowing experience. We finally get out of Atlanta. We get to Columbia, South Carolina, Christmas night. Well, now it's the morning of the 26th. And it's snowing in Columbia. And we're leaving a gas station. It's like 2 a.m. And this guy tries to get into the U-Haul with us. And my dad is like trying to close the door and shove him out. It was a nightmare.
While you're in the vehicle, he tries to get in.
We're pulling out of the gas station. And this like drugged up guy, I'll never forget, man. He's just like, hey, I want to come in there. I want in there. I was just, those are just highlights from this ordeal. Omaha to Charleston, December 2004. Yeah, that was the worst.
We were talking offline that you need to write a book, and I think you just laid out the premise of a great one.
I will say the best trip was just last summer of 2021. And so I planned this trip out, and we're going to fly from Dallas to Salt Lake City and then drive up through Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, back down Idaho into Utah, and had it all planned out and really looking forward to it. And I picked these 10 days or whatever it was. And then Carrie's like, yeah, I can't get off that week. It's a long story, but we'll have to do it, a week earlier. I was like, man, I got this, all this planned out, and you got to change the reservation dates, all this stuff. Anyway, got that done. Knew ahead of time enough. Got that done. It was truly the greatest trip ever. Because we originally, our big trip was going to be, I think, Disney World, but don't get me started on vaccines and masks and all that crap. Anyway, so I was like, you know what? We're going somewhere where it's just great wide open and screw your mandates. So trip was perfect. The temperature fluctuated between 39 degrees and 79 degrees on this trip. The mountains were perfect. The weather was Chamber of Commerce everywhere we went. It was unreal. Shout out to the Boise Redhawks. They won walk-off. Anyway, we did everything. The mountains, Glacier National Park is the greatest place on earth. And we get to the airport on the last day. We're leaving. We're sitting at the Salt Lake City airport. And I see on my phone, I've got what's this? We got a heat alert for this location today. Well, I guess it's a good timing that we're getting out of here. And if you'll recall, the summer of 2021 was record-setting heat from start to finish, and it was miserable. Remember this? Fires and just heat and drought and stuff. We literally, if we hadn't have left when we did and left when we wanted to, when I wanted to, it would have been a nightmare, because we actually know people that made a similar trip that week that we would have been gone, and they said it was just nasty everywhere and hot. Man, it was perfect while we were there. So I'm so glad it worked out. The dates had to get changed. But you're talking about leaving the windows open at night in your cabins. And that was my dream trip, was just driving through the Rocky Mountain West, where the temperature was, like I said, 40s, 50s, and 60s, 70s. Just
that's awesome.
So good. Yeah.
I love it out there. Yeah. Anyone that's watched the show knows that is my dream is Wyoming. In fact, I put the flag up here.
I see that.
Just for you, Keith, actually.
I should have worn my Wyoming State flag hat. I can go and change if you want.
Well, I was very proud of them recently saying the primaries, so I figured I would put the flag up.
I gotcha. No, I love Wyoming. I just, you can't go wrong. And this is my rule of thumb. You cannot go wrong with any state that is in the mountain time zone. Name the state that's in the mountain time zone, and I'm sold.
I agree.
Any state. Yeah, it's just so beautiful and quiet and wide open and peaceful. There's some suspect areas in Colorado, but that's why I always go up in the mountains when I'm there.
There's a reason I always say Wyoming. I like some parts of Colorado, but we'll just say there's some politics of Colorado I'm not a big fan of, but I definitely love Wyoming.
Do you get to spend a lot of time in Wyoming, specifically Cheyenne at all? Or is that just you love from afar?
So we've made a couple trips over the last couple of years because I've been fairly serious. If and when this grows, my intention is to move to Wyoming and to move away from my day job, which the listeners all know. But that being said, to answer your question, one of the trips, we did go to Cheyenne. I wasn't a huge fan of Cheyenne, the city, but I like the areas around it. And I need to give it a second chance. But we were actually going to stay at a hotel downtown that was kind of a nightmare. And it was like a lot of other cities. And
no, hang on a second now, because I'm kind of with you on Cheyenne's not, it's not postcard, like the rest of the state, right? However, I wonder if we stayed at the same hotel. What's the hotel do you remember the name of it?
I don't, but it's one that's been around for a long time, and they sell it as being this turn of the century hotel.
Yeah.
But it really looks like they took a Night's Inn and put, the furniture and everything was like they went to some sale at the Night's Inn and tried to create an old hotel.
Oh, really? Maybe we're not talking about the same. I can't think of the name of the hotel, but it's right across the reason. See, it's location, Wayne. And I'm going to figure out, because I've stayed there a couple times, and it is I'll never figure it out here on the fly. But the reason it's such a great place, if you ask me, is because it is directly across the street from Accomplice Beer, which is the great. Okay, so let me tell you about Accomplice Beer, man.
Please.
Oh, okay. I'm so angry right now. So I made a trip there recently, and I drove up to Cheyenne, and I'm going to be looking down here for a second until I figure out the name of this hotel. I'm so close to it. Okay. Oh gosh. Hang on a second. The name of that hotel. Anyway, so in 2019, I'm at Accomplice Beer there in downtown Cheyenne, and it's the greatest place on planet Earth that's not named Glacier National Park, because they have all of these beers on the wall, like little taps that you basically you scan your card or whatever, I don't know, and then you just get to sample all these beers, and then you just pay for however much you end up getting, and it's just great. It's just self-service and stuff. Well, I went there again. That was 2019. It was the greatest place on earth, right?
Yeah.
And then I went there this summer, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't do that anymore because of COVID, and you have to tell." It's just a bar now. It's literally a bar, and you see the taps on the wall, and you're right there. You're like, but the waitresses have to go and get it for you. Well, I tried everything on the wall when I was there the first time. There's a little sample, little sample. Oh, no. Now we're in post-COVID world. You don't get samples. It's literally a bar. And that really,
it's Wyoming.
Me.
Why? It's like Florida. You shouldn't have to be dealing with things change because of COVID.
Yeah. Historic Plains Hotel.
Yes.
Yeah. And so so I'm kind of torn on ghosts. I don't know. Maybe. I'm pretty sure on aliens right now, given the world we're in, but go on. Oh, yeah. But I'm telling you, I have never felt ghosts the way I did in the Plains Hotel in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Did you actually stay?
Yeah.
So we got the room, and we went in there, and I swear the room we had literally looked like they had just went to like Night's Inn or Days Inn or something and got some discount furniture deal and laid that out. And nothing even matched. Like it was literally like, grandma's piece of art here with some odd florals on it. And then it's like, what in the world is this? My wife was like, no, we're not staying here.
You left, huh? Yeah. A lot of presidents have stayed there over the years, and a lot of celebrities.
Yeah, their website sold me. I was like, yeah, this is our kind of thing.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. Have you been up to Sheridan?
Well, real quick. The one thing that was such a trip at the Plains Hotel is that they built it before there was running water. And you'll notice that the bathrooms, I don't know if you stayed long enough, the bathroom and the shower and stuff is like elevated.
I noticed that.
Yeah, it was a trip, man. Sheridan,
And the reason I asked,
I might have passed through. I don't know that I've stayed there. Yeah.
So it's almost directly north of Cheyenne. So it's on the northeast corner of the state. And there's a beautiful, Cody, like Buffalo Bill Cody Hotel or whatever.
Oh, cool.
Absolutely wonderful. Has the old keys, where you had to get it from the front desk with the old stock
nice.
keys. We stayed there the night before we were going to stay in Cheyenne. Okay. So that actually played a big part in, we had just stayed in this beautiful turn of the century hotel. And then we go to the one in Cheyenne, and it was a little disappointing.
And it ruined it for you, huh?
Yeah. We were ruined due to Sheridan.
I think I visited Sheridan. No, I was just looking at it here. See, I lived in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, in 1993-ish. And that's not, I was mapping to see how far Scottsbluff was to Sheridan. And I'm looking where Sheridan is right there. I don't think I've ever been there, man. Not even passing through. I'm trying to think of the town now. It's bugging me. I want to know the town that I'm thinking about that I visited when I lived in Scottsbluff. I don't know that it really add much to your podcast, but I'm just trying to figure it out for my own benefit here. Anyway, I love Wyoming. I especially love the western side of the state with the Yellowstone and Grand Tetons and all that good stuff.
Yeah, we were very blessed to stay in there's a rancher outside of Cody, so probably like 15 miles outside of Cody, Wyoming. And I just happened to be on Airbnb living down here in Florida, and came across this place. Well, they had just moved what would be the mom and dad of the old man. So it's the son that's our age that's was like, hey, let's put this thing on Airbnb to make some money. But family ranch, been there forever, kind of into the mountains. And what's really cool is you had actually parents' home, then up on the hill, you had the actual homestead now. And then when you go up and over the mountain walking and come down the other side, you had all the buildings that were there when they homesteaded the property in the late 1800s. So I just happened to find this place on Airbnb, and I called the guy up and he's like, yeah, we just moved grandma and grandpa into town. You're going to be the first people to stay here. So I was like, oh, wow. Heck yeah. So we went out there, stayed the week. Wonderful experience. I mean, it felt like you were staying in grandma and grandpa's house because they still had like the little doilies and everything, like grandma had literally just left. And it was a pretty cool experience. And you're 15 miles or so outside of Cody. So you were, first of all, cell phones didn't work, which is always a prerequisite for a good time. Yeah. And it was just absolutely gorgeous.
I'm with it, man. That's one of the things that I like to do is get up into the mountains, lose cell service. And you know what? If I catch up with what's been going on in the world when I come back down, cool. If I don't, seriously, I'm not going to be on my deathbed going, oh my goodness, I missed that one Joe Biden speech while I was in the hills. Oh, anyway.
And we're going to
get away, man. You got to get away. And I try to get to the mountains a minimum of one time per year. And there are some hidden gems. Yes.
Fish or just hike, or do you have a favorite?
I like to hike. I do. That's just it. See, people say, why don't you go hiking here in Dallas? Well, because it's flat and it sucks and the views aren't good. If the goal is a view, right? Or cooler temperatures or whatever, I'll hike all day. I mean, my step counter, I'm so mad, man. I guess I got a new phone right before I went to my last trip to Colorado. And I didn't have my step counter hooked up on this thing yet. Hooked up, I say. Listen to me, old man talk. Anyway, my step counter wasn't working on the little thingamabob. But I know oh my goodness. You've got to get to Colorado Springs. And there's a place called Garden of the Gods.
Ben.
Okay. Is that not? So it's free, as you know.
It's
the
beautiful.
Family donated and said, look, it's part of the city. You can't charge. Dude, one day I walked around. So you know how you can, for those that don't know, you could do, it's just a whole bunch of trails, right? And you could just do a circle and call it done. Or half a circle, call it done, right? Bro, I made it a point to literally do the entire, I might have missed a couple of cut throughs or whatever, but like I did the entire park. I want to know how many miles I logged. because that was a day. That was a day, and but the weather was perfect. So there's that. It's so cool because there was a little baby deer, a little fawn, right?
Yep.
Sitting right next to the trail, sleeping. And like we would just walk by and stuff, and the baby was just like, "Hey, what's up, y'all?" Little icon. Hey, what's up? Just love that stuff. I love that stuff. So anyway,
my buddy, I just had. In fact, he was on the podcast that released yesterday. Darren Hill. He is running for sheriff in Douglas County, Colorado, which is the county directly south of.
I'm familiar.
It's in between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny you say, because I saw you post about the fawn on Twitter. Around the same time, he had a pregnant deer, jump over his fence in his backyard and have her fawn right back there, right in his backyard, right in front of him.
That is cool, man.
Amazing.
I've stayed. I'm very familiar with that area. I stayed at an Airbnb. This couple took one of those. What were those old? I don't know. So you know how they used to have these in the 40s or 50s or whatever. They used to have these trailer things. Boy, you're going to want to edit this podcast heavily. I'll tell you that. It's killing me. Airstream, right?
Yeah. Airstreams.
Yeah.
Those things are expensive, by the way.
Okay. Well, this older gentleman and his wife, they retired and then they refurbished. They bought these old Airstreams, and so here's where I stayed. Let me show you. So they put one of these up in the hills. Can you see that?
Yeah,
there?
Absolutely.
Anyway, which is just so lovely, and it's got a view of Pikes Peak, and so he was telling me how he's going to refurbish a bunch of these and kind of spread them out up in the hills there. Anyway, I just love Colorado. I will say that, as I stated on the Twitter, Colorado is a gateway drug to Montana.
Yeah.
But Colorado, I can drive to Colorado from here, and so that's why I end up there more often than Montana.
Now I'm going to be in Aspen the end of November. Is there any saving grace to Aspen?
I don't think I've been there. I think that's the one like ski town or whatever that I've never been there, Steamboat Springs, I dig. Estes Park is nice because that'll get you into Rocky Mountain National Park. I've just, over the last few years now, I've become more and more familiar with Colorado, and it just, it's nice, but you can tell that it's going to get ruined real soon. It's already, here's the funny thing. It's not that funny, actually. It's really depressing. So buckle up. So 1996, Carrie and I go to Colorado. We go to see U2. Yeah, it was May 1st, 1997. Get your story straight. No, that was a different trip to Colorado. Anyway, I have really bad mental problems, as you can tell. Trying to stay on track here.
I love it.
No, it was February. So it was February 96. It doesn't matter to this story, Keith. Shut up. And these protesters were in front of the state capitol, like legalized marijuana. And we took
97?
Yeah, it was February. Let's see. So I met her in 95. So there's 94. 95, 96. So it's February 96. Protesters in front. And we took a selfie. And you see these protesters back there, but you didn't have a camera phone. You had to develop it later. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so we blocked the sign, but these guys are out there. You legalize pot, dude. Anyway, so that was 96. And so obviously all the Californians had moved to Colorado and put down roots. And obviously you see what's happening there. And by the way, I will say, as speaking to an officer of the law, I am not, please don't insinuate that I am against legalizing marijuana. I am not saying that. But I'm just saying that the transformation had started.
Right.
And then in 2002, we went to Boise, And I said, Boise's going to be the next refuge for people, that ruin Colorado or move from California. So when we went back to Boise in 2021, you look around, you're like, yep, it's well on its way. Boise was such a gem 20 years ago. People have the secrets out,
Yeah.
So my next Boise, ladies and gentlemen, the next place that's going to be, the popular place that's going to be ruined is Bozeman, Montana. So anyway, just thought all the little Rocky Mountain places, all of them, those secrets get out, man, and those places get ruined.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I was seeing the beginning of it in Cody. That my only hope for Wyoming is there isn't a whole lot there, so it may take a little while for people to want to go there in general. But the changing world post 2020 unfortunately makes it where people can live anywhere and do their work. So
I will tell you that if you're a college town, it doesn't even matter if you're in the reddest of red states, you're gonna get infected. And Laramie is right there, University of Wyoming, Boise State's in Boise. It just doesn't matter. If you're a college town, you don't have a fighting chance.
Yeah. Well, the reason my buddy is running for sheriff in Douglas County is because he's running on the libertarian platform because the Republican there is pro the red flag laws. So that's what prompted him to jump into the race.
I have a lot of politically active friends in Douglas County. So does he have a chance? How's the Libertarian Party? Because I know that they're active there. I know they're very active there.
And that's what he was saying. He felt now it's we did that interview probably 3 weeks ago. Like I said, it just released yesterday. So I haven't spoke to him since it came out yesterday. But yeah, he felt that he had a chance for the reasons you're saying, that something to do with the way the voting goes there. The Libertarian actually has a chance of.
And they're very organized. I'll say that. What is his name?
Darren Hill, Darren, Darren Hill. And it's Hill for Liberty is his website. Okay.
So I'll make sure that all the people that I know in that area that vote in that county, that they get out and show support. And they'll probably come back to me and say, bro, we got it. We know this. We've been all over this. It's Hill for Liberty, you said?
Yeah. Hill for Liberty, the number 4. So it's the number 4, Hill for Liberty. Right.
Yeah. But why do people do that? I don't like that. What, tell your friend to don't substitute numbers for letters and words and stuff. It's just,
just causes too much confusion.
You know what I'm saying? I honestly, I'll tell you what it is. So my brain, dude, sorry. And I promise this is water, officer. This is nothing else.
Not vodka. There's
not vodka. I think the first time I ever saw that was Sinead O'Connor, Nothing Compares to You. And she did the 2 and the U. And I think my brain has just kind of been programmed to despise numbers for words ever since.
I love it.
And she did it twice. She took TO and turned it to the number 2. And she took YOU and turned it to the letter U. See, that's a twice offender in one song title.
In general, I agree. In general, I hate it. I will say that in this modern, I don't know which I hate worse. Like on Twitter, someone already took On the Blue Line. So I'm like On the Blue Line 1 or whatever, which drives me crazy. So I guess if you can get creative, then that works.
And it's Hill. Watch this. I'm just going to type this in. Hill,
the number
for
4
Liberty, yep. which I love that website. But if people can't spell FOR, they're not going to show up and vote.
Well,
so Hill
I
for
could
Liberty,
make an argument. Maybe they are voting, given what we're seeing.
Okay, I mean there he is, good-looking guy. Hope he wins.
Yeah, that's him. That's Darren.
Got a bad glare there. But my issue is it doesn't even look like he tried to get FOR. See, because I type in Hill FOR Liberty, and then it's just a blank page there. What's the price? Like it didn't even try. Come on, cost you extra $5 to redirect.
Well, inflation, it's probably 12 now.
Oh yeah. Okay. My bad. Sorry. Hey, look, I love it when liberty-minded people who respect the Constitution, which I know that is a big part of your show. And I appreciate police officers who respect the rule of law and and stand for individual rights and liberty. People that take the time and the effort, bro, it takes everything in me to stay awake for a Braves game every night. Okay. And these people are out there wanting to make a difference with our laws and in our institutions and running for higher office. God bless them. I just appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, the best I've ever done is I served on a planning and zoning board. My goodness, what a nightmare!
As you said, that would probably be a nightmare.
It was. I got tricked. I was told there would be candy. No,
no donuts and sugar.
No donuts and sugar. Yeah. So that was insane enough. I can't imagine being elected and being held accountable. And I mean, you know what? It's actually easier, I think. Or is it? Let's noodle this out here on the fly.
All right.
I was going to say, since people like you and I imagine Hill, the number 4, Liberty, I imagine that I started to say, look, it's easy because we have a set of principles. And if it's in the Constitution and if it's there, then the authority exists. If it's not, then it goes to this, how it goes, right?
Yep.
So I started to say that's easier than a liberal who, is just like, whatever feels right, but you know what though? It's not easy. It's actually quite difficult. And there's so much pressure. So on one hand, I will say it's easy because we have the rule book and we understand our limitations. But on the other hand, it's challenging because my gosh, what a world filled, what a nation filled with screeching. I am Legion, effectively, on the other side, right? I mean, Let's just say what it is. So God bless him. I don't know where I was going with that. Like I said, we were just kind of free forming there. But your friend does well. I'm going to make sure that all of my pro freedom, because that was a big thing there in Douglas County. Is Governor Polis with his overreach and there's just that is a clash of civilizations in Colorado.
Yep.
That is incredibly insane far left liberal.
Yep.
Mixed with your far right conservative rancher types who just want to be left alone. But see, that's where the Libertarian Party can tap into. But it's almost like, is it too late for a place like Denver and that surrounding area? Because there's just been such an infestation from refugees from far left states like California that have come in there and just wrecked the place. Because Denver was when I was a kid, I'm 46, man. When I was a kid, Colorado was conservative. I mean, that was just
it was a foregone conclusion. Yeah,
that was state,
solid red Midwest. Yep.
Yeah, but
so I don't think it's easy. This is my opinion. I think it's easy for people like us to. Like what we want is simple. There's no doubt about it. In fact, I say all the time, what size should the government be? Well, that's a real easy answer. So small it fits in the Constitution. It's extremely simple when it comes to that. But I do think people in certain positions, it's difficult to make that. We're seeing it where there's going to be a true cost in this country for being willing to hold the line and being willing to stand up, which is kind of something I'm always talking about, because we've seen sheriffs. I don't want to get specifically into it, but we've seen sheriffs on the wrong side of issues here recently, maybe in South Texas, that, are saying things that are very concerning and maybe not in line with where we should be constitutionally. So I think those that do hold a constitutional mindset, on one hand, are going to be assaulted more and and when I say assaulted, I mean verbally at this point, but are going to have more pushback, sometimes even within their own agencies. But I also think that the sheriffs, and I said this at the intro to last week's show, or my show yesterday that released with Darren, is that I also firmly believe that the sheriffs are one of the last lines of defense in this country for the Constitution. So I just find that to be such an important role that they're holding right now in modern times.
When push comes to shove and it gets nastier, which I don't see anything that suggests the trajectory of our nation is going to turn on a dime anytime soon. But as it gets more and more intense out there, and officers are asked to enforce laws that are clearly a violation of our natural rights, what's the sense that you get from your buddies that are also in the law enforcement business? When push comes to shove, are they going to just enforce these orders? I don't want to call them laws. Are they going to enforce these edicts that because the dry run that was COVID and the fallout after that, I don't have a lot of hope that liberty-minded people are going to step up. I'm not saying they're not out there. I just wonder if they're going to step up and be that actually line of defense between people like me who just want to live their lives and be left alone from government overreach. Are they just going to follow their marching orders and go to town?
That's a great question. And it's something that I think about a lot. It's something I know you guys, we haven't even got to the beginning of your story yet. So at some point here, we'll get to kind of what you do so everybody knows. But when I listen to like you, and obviously Steve Deace talks a lot about this kind of stuff where it's like, you guys are a bunch of wet noodles. How do I expect, Todd, is always like, you won't even stand up at a school board. Todd Earson, you won't even stand up at a school board meeting. How in the world are you going to like stand up against, the things that are coming? Like when it really is your livelihood and your family on the line and so forth. So I think the answer to that is two parts. That's one reason why I think there's an education side of it so that you really know what you believe. There's a lot of people. So I'm 43. So we're in the same age bracket. That was one of the things I was going to get to is how the world's changed since the 80s and 90s. A little bit. I think we would both agree, but
a little bit.
I think that there is something to knowing why you believe what you believe that we have lost in this country. So I think that is very important. I think we're wrestling against things right now that are so un-American that there really shouldn't be an argument. We can agree as Americans on a lot of fundamental things. And when we're arguing for things that are clearly not even American, I think we can find a lot of middle ground, even with people who would be quote unquote liberals or whatever, however you want to term that. And then I think the other side of that too is putting them in the right position. So you need people who, as sheriff, the constitutional voted for position that hold these same ideals. And I've said it before, I'm very fortunate in Florida to be in a state where I have a governor that is holding the line. I have, I work in a great county. So I'm very fortunate right now, but I feel the pain of the people from across this country that I talk to all the time. And I do wonder myself, when push comes to shove, are people going to stand up for, what they say they actually believe?
It's amazing the rapid descent that we are on as a nation. You had just mentioned how it was a little different now than it was growing up in the 80s and 90s. You remember? So we grew up in the 80s. We have a president that loves America, is not shy about saying it, and then the baby boomers come of age and elect another president that took up the bulk of the 90s. And I think we were just kind of living dangerously. We went from Reagan to Clinton, and he was kind of more like the hippie mindset, right? So he was more like look, I just want to, get high and hang out with interns and just Bill Clinton was more of the selfish president. Okay. I don't think he hates America. In fact, I give him credit for one of the greatest speeches ever. And it was a D-Day remembrance speech. Go back and look at it in 1994. And when you go and look for it, you got to find they cut it up and it's on YouTube. You got to find the full speech. It's just so good. And so I give him credit for that. I don't think he hates America, but see, America was living dangerously. We went from a president in Reagan, either Bush, whatever, who loved America to, you know what, now I just want to enjoy myself, be happy. I'm a hippie, Bill Clinton. And then now we are going through a cycle of presidents, save for the 4 years of Trump. But I'm just talking about the 8 years of Obama. And right now, under Joe Biden, we are now being governed by people who openly want to, if not change America, outright destroy it. Yep. And Biden's brain, notwithstanding, just take that aside. The people that are pulling the strings, the people that put the stuff into his teleprompter, the people that put executive orders in front of the man and say, sign here. We're no longer dealing with, so in our lifetime, you and me, we've gone from a president that loved this country to 4 years and 1 day later to a president that just wanted to, smoke weed and hang out with babes and whatever. To now we are going to, our children are living through a time where the leaders of this country want our way of life destroyed. Yeah. You cannot convince me that every decision that is made in that White House is made to lower our quality of life, saddle our kids with debt that they know is never going to be repaid. That's not the point. Right. It's meant to make us weaker and more dependent, first on this government and then on the rest of the world. And it's just so sad to think that we have, in so many ways, if you want to go back, I mean, you could go back to just really any policy in the last, I don't know, I'd say 75 years. Anyway, we were always trying to build, if it wasn't after World War II, we were always trying to build up the rest of the world, bring them up to our level. But no, we turned on a dime in the last 15 years now. And now it's, we're gonna bring us down to the rest of the world. Well, that does a disservice to not only us, but the rest of the world. And it's so, you're talking about the things that we debate in this country now. I mean, can you imagine? Listen to this. And then I'll shut up because this is, I got it.
It's true.
Check this out. I remember when, right before 9/11, it was the summer of 2001, and George Bush was trying to pass his tax cuts. You remember that? And everybody was going to rush out to their mailboxes and get a check waiting for them and stuff, rebate from the previous year's taxes under the new tax percentage breakdown. And I remember the Democrats were really pushing back on that. And I thought, I cannot believe that we are wasting time debating who doesn't want a tax cut? Who doesn't want that? Okay, now we're 20 years removed from that. And I would kill to have an argument over how big a tax rebate should be. Instead, we are in a nation that, remember, has had now 10 years, thank God for the Trump years, but 10 years almost uninterrupted of destruction. And trying to destroy our kids through this gender bullcrap, you name it. I mean, it's just, they have found so many ways to destroy our kids. If it's not through mask mandates or remote learning or shutting down childhoods and saying you can't go here and this camp is closed, you don't get to enjoy your summer. No, you can't go here unless you're vaccinated. No, what gender do you think you are? Oh, and you're white. Oh, then you do suck. I would love to debate tax cuts, but no, instead we're just trying to keep our kids from literally going insane in this world as they learn absolutely no life skills whatsoever, unless you take it upon yourself. And that is your job as a parent. I am terrified. So I'm just saying that we've had our happy-go-lucky childhood, which, if you'll recall, was in the middle of the Cold War.
Right.
But it was still we knew that our president had our best interest, and
Right.
and our leaders were doing what it took to protect us. I don't need you to protect me on what I'm allowed to eat. I need you to protect me from a missile coming in from the Soviet Union.
Exactly.
We went from that to we're arguing over tax cuts to now we're arguing over what's a woman. And I sit back and I go, dear God in heaven, 20 years from now, I cannot even begin to imagine what we're going to be debating as a nation, if we're even a nation at that point.
Yeah. No, it's as a kid, I mean, it was literally all I was worried about was, what the commies were going to do. That was the one thing in the 80s. And it was the 80s. So you had Rambo and you had all the stuff so you knew America was going to kick their butt too. It was kind of like the only thing I worried about was them, but you always had this mindset, like a Red Dawn mindset. At least I did, as a kid. Bro. It's like they're coming and I'm going,
I can't, bro. 5th grade, man. Me and I don't know, 6 or 8 other guys in the class. We would take notebook paper, right? And we would fold it. We'd take about, 10 sheets or so. We'd fold it. I've never talked about this. This is so funny. Then we'd staple. I mean, make little books, right?
Yep.
And we would write stories. And we were the heroes off fighting war, and slowly but surely, we'd die off until, 1 or 2 of us were left at the end.
To tell the story, right?
To tell the story of killing the commies when they came to Cobb County, Georgia, looking for a fight. So Red Dawn, absolutely. But now these kids are getting together like, so, you a boy or a girl today? Oh, did you hear about that family-friendly drag show? Oh, you're in it? I mean, I swear, the nation doesn't survive this kind of mentality. It just does not.
And if they write the book to defeat the commies and save America, the cops are going to be knocking on their door because they're talking about violence. And, next thing you know, they're on a list somewhere and someday they're not going to be able to even buy a firearm.
It's madness.
It truly is.
How
do we get here, Keith? How is it just a naivete? Is it just because we used to talk about the silent majority and, you had this group of people that one day were going to wake up and I'm not so sure those people exist, A, and then B, well, I mean, how did we get here in your opinion?
How did we get here? Well, let me think here. I would say that one way we did get here is a complete reliance on someone other than ourselves. And what I mean by that is government. Yeah. We decided as a nation that we were going to rely less on God and more on the government as our God. And I mean, that's been an insidious thing for over 100 years of progressivism. And Woodrow Wilson, I mean, let's figure out how we can replace God, and it's been very effective. And we also got here because we're lazy, because there have been so many generations before us that tilled that ground from the Revolutionary War. I mean, just the descriptions of that war. I mean, they could have lived a comfortable enough life as royal subjects, but they're like, no, I'm an American and we're going to do things differently around here. So those generations and their strength and what they did is, and this holds true from the Revolutionary War through the World War II generation. They knew there was something bigger than them. And by that, I mean, they knew that they were fighting for God-given freedoms. You can't today even broach that subject because so many people don't even believe in God. So how am I defending a right from God when I've been conditioned for over a century that government is my God? So therefore, if my rights are coming from something up on high, it's got to be the government, right?
Yeah.
So then you try to just you try to explain to them natural law. If they're not going to go with you on God, then let's talk about natural law and like a mama bear's right to defend her cubs, right? So you try that angle. But there is no room for intellectual conversation in this country because we've been purposefully dumbed down by our education system. We've had God stripped out and replaced with government. And oh my gosh, there was it was de Tocqueville, I think, who wrote about how you can literally go into any shop in America. Get this guy. This guy was saying you could go into any shop in America and talk about the Constitution with people. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Have you talked to anybody on the street about the Constitution in a while? When's the last time you were like, man, I don't think what they're doing in DC is constitutional. What do you think? They'll look at you like, bro, what language are you speaking? You know?
Right. Well,
and I mean, honestly, so you say, how do we get here? I think it's just been a war of mental attrition through so many fronts in our society. It probably peaked. I don't know. I don't say. I just don't know that. I don't know that you get that back.
Well, that was going to be the follow-up question. Right?
That question is easier to answer than how did we get here? I'm sorry. It's easier to explain how we get here than how do we get back? Because man, it's like, I feel like at this point you turn around. It's not just turning around. It's like turning around and shooting your way out, literally and figuratively. I think every door behind us is practically closed at this point. And I don't have high hopes.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest.
No, I'm with you. And that's why I was curious what your thoughts on it were, because it's something that weighs on me quite heavily, and I have had similar thoughts. And I know there's some out there that are like, well, with a revival, maybe there's a chance, or, you hear things like Convention of States, maybe that could slow down some of the federal government stuff. And, a lot of these things are good, but it is a good question as to how do we get back and can we get back?
Okay, so Dr. Strange found one way out. Remember that?
Yep.
Okay. So there's one. I don't know where it exists, but there's one way out of billions.
Somewhere in the multiverse, we will find the one to get out.
There is a timeline out there where it gets better.
I like that.
I will say that I do not, and I want to make this very clear. I don't put hope into politicians. Just the end. I do feel some hope that someone like a Ron DeSantis obviously does exist out there, who respects the Constitution, who talks about God, who talks about the greatness of America. Those people are obviously still out there. They're few and far between. But when you find somebody such as your friend who's running for sheriff, you got to support these people, because if they don't get support, vocal, loud support, and people sticking up for them, then they're done before the election. I mean, they're like, I was going to say before the next election cycle. But the reason I stopped myself is because you got to get them elected to begin with. You can't just, they don't just drop into that role. Okay. That's not how we do things. We don't find votes in the middle of the night. So you've actually got to find these people and support them. And it's tough, man. It's really tough. And I don't think there's an easy answer. And if I do come up with one, I'll be sure to let you know.
Absolutely.
When you find a place that is freedom loving, such as like a Wyoming that you talked about, I think you got to defend these places, insulate them somehow. And I do not have all the answers. I'm not sitting here like, oh, I'm so smart. I'm literally just thinking of this stuff on the fly. You've got to just defend these places, state by state, city by city, put good people into local office, because they're the ones that are going to affect your life more than any.
Yeah. No, I agree with that a lot. In fact, not that I keep mentioning his name, but he was just talking about these kind of things probably a couple of weeks ago. Steve Deace was talking on his show where he was saying, if you're in some of these states, it's a lost cause. Why are you still hanging out in New York? Why are you still, hey, get your butt to Florida where we actually can like override some of these numbers, or be a political refugee and head to Wyoming, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And there has been a few, as weird as it is, here's, I don't know if this is hope, but at least it sounds good. This is actually, some good things came out of COVID. You got the parents realizing that their children were being stolen right out from under them by their teachers. So when you had the kids on lockdown at home, remote learning, and the parents like, what the hell? What was that I just heard? So that was one good thing. Another good thing is that people realized and companies realized, wait a minute, they don't need to come into to the office, And the next thing you know, I know so many people, and I've talked to many of them have been guests on my podcast where they specifically said, yeah, I realized I didn't need to stay living in New York. I moved to Florida. Yeah. Oh yeah. I used to go to the city every day, New York City. Now I work remote from Florida. Oh, now I moved to Texas, and I still work for the same company, but I was able to move. So that is fascinating because these are obviously people who appreciate personal freedom. And even if it's just financial, even if your brain is wired to, I don't want to pay a state income tax, whatever moved you out of a blue state in the Northeast or out of California into a state like Steve Deace is referring to and bolstering these red states, and understand that these states are barely red.
Yeah.
They are so.
Look at Texas right now.
Texas. And then in Florida, I mean, that election between, was it Andrew Gillum?
Yeah.
Right. And Ron DeSantis. I mean, that was close. And I don't know that I've said this publicly, but I've had this thought. Ron DeSantis would not be the governor today if not for the debacle that was the 2000 presidential election. Because Florida was the first state to go, oh my gosh, our election system is messed up here. This hanging Chad bull crap. We got to lock this thing down.
Right.
We got to figure it out. We got to streamline it. We got to make sure that it's on the level. And that, I am convinced, and I don't know how you could find empirical data, but I think that them fixing, because they were ahead of everybody else on fixing their elections and making them more secure, that is what enabled DeSantis to win legitimately in 2018. Other states where they didn't have this chaos, because you got to remember, George Soros wasn't doing his SOS project, his Secretary of State project, until it was around the time Obama was elected. He started that thing going. So now states that have these George Soros-backed secretaries of state who have taken these elections and manipulated them in their own special ways, these are the states that are swing states that are blue. Yeah. And if you look at the states that that there's still a fighting chance of winning these elections, they have done maybe not everything they need to do to lock down their elections, but they've done enough.
Right.
And in fact, I mean, that's why they were screaming at Georgia, screaming at Texas, because, oh my gosh, they're going to be like Florida. They're going to, we can't have we got to have ways to affect outcomes of elections. And if these states, Georgia, get in line, or we're taking your all-star game, they didn't get in line. Okay, well, then we're going to see how elections are. Texas, and I think they've left Texas alone for the most part because it's just too big. What are you going to, you know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just think that I cannot wait for this election cycle. I don't know when you're going to post this, but I think that I think it's going to be interesting to see the states that did clean up their election process. I think it's going to be okay. But I think Florida, man, that's what tipped off Soros. Like, oh my gosh, I got to do something about the secretaries of state. That's where the power is in these states. Look at Florida. I mean, that's where this thing is. So anyway, no DeSantis is governor if not for the debacle in the year 2000 with Bush and Gore.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And I would agree with that logic. It makes a lot of sense. At some point, you actually get a degree in journalism. You just kind of want to start there and kind of walk into what you do now.
So it actually started, I fell in love with radio when I was 8 years old, actually. I had a friend in the Navy. I didn't meet him till I was 10 though. So when I was about 8 years old, I decided I want to be a sports announcer. And so my mom put this little tiny black and white TV in my room that I could watch the Braves games on Channel 17 in Atlanta. And so she would, sweetheart, she would sit in the living room and watch the Braves with the sound down. And I'd be back there talking on a little walkie-talkie, announcing the game. And she would have me as the play-by-play for the Braves games. It was really special. So, but I met a guy in my neighborhood when I was 10, Alan Casey, and he and he was a total nerd. And I mean that with all affection in the world. He would experiment in his basement with stuff. And so he and I started adding some power to our walkie-talkies and seeing how far we could broadcast. And I lived in the highest point of the neighborhood for the most part. And so that we had to use the base to transmit anyway. And so we would just do experiments and stuff like that. I fell in love with radio. And then I started volunteering at my church's radio station. Like I told the guy who ran the station, I said, I want to work here, whatever. Anyway, he said, so the day that you turn 16, come back and see me. And that was like 2 years out in the future. And so I literally showed up on my birthday and I started volunteering there. I decided to go to the University of Nebraska and get a degree there. Had a college radio show. I still wanted to do sports broadcasting. However, I will say that I was involved in politics since age 12 because the Atlanta Falcons used to always get blacked out in Atlanta. And so they weren't on TV and I'd have to listen to them on the radio. And I remember one day, I don't know if it was a teacher work day or whatever, but it was like a Monday. It was the day after the Falcons, and the station that the Falcons were on, that radio, when I came home early from school that day, I turned it on and here was this guy that I'd never heard before. And I'm like, hey, I'm enjoying this. I'm going to keep listening, and it was Rush Limbaugh. And so I listened to talk radio every day from that point forward. Yeah. And I fell in love with just conservative radio and politics of it and everything. Because this was, and I said it was 1988. No, it was 1990. I'm sorry. So I must have been 14. Yeah. Anyway, so my point is, I still wanted, when I went to college, I wanted to be in sports broadcasting. I wanted to be an NHL announcer. I wanted to do that. And then I realized, it was really hard to pronounce all these Russian last names on the fly while the puck's moving down the ice so fast. So then I thought, maybe football or something like that. But in college, the more and more I did it, just, I kept getting drawn back into politics. So anyway, I did some producing for a talk show while I was in college for a local talk station there in Lincoln. And then when I got out of college, moved to Atlanta and wanted to, I knew what show I wanted to produce before I even worked at this station in Atlanta. And I worked my way into that station. People say it's who you know. And that's such a cop-out, I think, because while it is true, it is who you know. If you know people and you make a bad impression, or you're not a good worker, or, you're a jerk or whatever, then who you know has the exact opposite effect on you. your career trajectory. So anyway, I got in at the radio station in Atlanta, and timing is everything, right? As I was working, I just had started there, and I was going to start doing work for like a high school football score show, whatever, any scoreboard show. And the guy, the morning board op, see, everything's so automated now, man. And you can't get your start the way I did. And it sucks. And I hate this for people, where you can make all sorts of mistakes running the board overnight, because that's what I did. Because the overnight guy who ran the board during Coast to Coast AM and Art Bell, they put him on the morning show because the morning show guy was going in for back surgery. So you got this guy who's hungry and goes and fills in the overnight spot. So when the guy comes back from the back surgery and everything goes back the way it was, well, I'm odd man out, obviously. Right. But they found a spot for me because over that, I don't know, 6 weeks of filling in or whatever it was, they were like, hey, how about this talk show thing? There's an opening over there. And that was the show that I had originally wanted to be a part of for the longest time. Anyway.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I had a great time producing that show. And there's so many, how do I say this? There's so many weird connections that you got to think that there's a larger hand at play here, because there's just too much. There's no such thing as coincidences, man.
Absolutely.
And so the guy who hired me in Atlanta ended up getting transferred to Houston. It's just so funny as I think this on the fly, man. And so the show that I produced in Atlanta was Ian Punnett. And Ian, you might be familiar with him. He does some Coast to Coast AM fill-in stuff. Anyway, so I had a blast working on Ian's show because that's what I wanted to do from the start. And then when my boss, Ken Charles, gets transferred to Houston, he brings me with him. Well, I end up producing an afternoon show. Trust me, kids, it's a lot more fun working afternoons than the mornings because you get a little bit more sleep under your belt. But then I get out there, and within 2 months, I think the morning show guy's producer quit. And so then I go and fill in that role. And you may have heard of him. The guy who produced that or hosted that morning show was Pat Gray. And so it's been so wild. But Houston's not a place to raise a family, man. So we hightailed it to Omaha without a job, which is not a good plan, kids.
Right.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Did you have a family at this point? Kids and
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, married with one kid at that point.
Yeah.
And moved to Omaha.
Don't do this.
Yeah. Don't do that, kids. So I did a couple of part-time jobs up there in Omaha, but then something opened up. I applied, I counted, it was over 200 jobs before, and hardly any nibbles, man. So this is 2004. And ended up in Charleston, South Carolina, where I worked for 5 years. And then a guy named Glenn Beck, you may have heard of, was expanding his staff. And so Pat put in a good word for me. It turned out that Glenn's agent was the same as Ian's agent back in Atlanta.
That is awesome.
Yeah, there was another connection that here under pressure that I'm forgetting, and I hate it. But there was 3 weird, things kind of working in tandem there. Oh, and I forgot to mention that when I applied for that job in Charleston, the guy who hired me in Charleston, one of my references was Ian, if you recall, from Atlanta.
Right.
Anyway, when Ian had been in Nashville, the guy who hired me was a big fan of Ian's. And so he's like, dude, when my idol was on my voicemail talking about how great you were, it's like, there's no chance I wasn't going to hire you. So anyway, that was just kind of cool. But I don't know if this says anything. Maybe it's less divine intervention, and maybe it's just that radio is so incestuous. Could it be that?
That is a theory. I like the first one though better.
Yeah, you like the first one. We'll stick with that one there. No, but no, it's a small world, man. So go back to my original point. anyway, so I ended up working for Glenn. Obviously, we moved to Dallas, and Pat has his own show now, and just Small World comes.
And just so the listeners know, you produce. Am I getting that correct? The Pat Gray Unleashed.
Produce Pat Gray Unleashed,
which is 7 o'clock Eastern. Correct?
7 to 9 Eastern precedes Glenn Beck on the Blaze Radio and TV network. You can listen to it on iHeart. You can download the podcast wherever. Pat Gray Unleashed. I started to say, you're going to make impressions on people throughout your life, and if you make bad impressions, then your name may come up somewhere along the line, and they'll be like, oh, okay, I'm not going to return this call for a reference, or I'm not going to, you know what I'm saying? Like it works both ways.
It does.
So yeah, it is who you know, but be careful and make an impression, make a good impression all along the way. And if you're trying to get in this business, this is the thing though. So while I say I wish that there were opportunities for people to work the board on radio stations overnight and make mistakes and experiment, and as long as you get back into coast to coast AM on time, then no one's gonna jump down your throat. But at the same time that those opportunities aren't available in mass the way they used to be, there are opportunities that didn't exist back then. I, as a 12-year-old, literally living in my parents' basement, would have killed to be able to make a podcast.
Yeah.
For
you and me
world
both.
To hear. For the world to hear, right? Right. And
I was just doing recorded tapes. I was doing the little, hit record, and that was that's what I was doing back then.
Yeah. I hope those tapes have been burned.
Yeah. I tried to sing on a couple of them, and Lord knows nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah. So I would make these shows, and then bless her heart, my mom would listen to them, driving to work or whatever, and kind of critique them for me. And, I literally had like 3 stereos there and all this stuff. And anyway, what I did is I ran, you could buy these Radio Shack kits, and you could do these little experiments, and you would make a light bulb, you'd make an alarm, you would make a little miniature radio station, right?
I had one.
Okay. So I would make I would buy it. I would make the radio station. That's literally all I would use it for. I would never undo it to make a, light bulb go off or whatever. And so what you would do is you would increase the power by hooking it up to like a lantern battery or a car battery or something like that. And then you'd run wire. Like, I literally, my ceiling was just tiles, and you'd run that around the house, and then you'd have radio station everywhere. And then I started to venture out, and then I would do it along the house. Hopefully my stepdad wouldn't see the wire out there. And then you would try to increase your reach, right? So we haven't discussed how injury prone I am and accident prone I am, but, and I'll make this quick, but this is worth telling. So
all the time in the world. Go on.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm in high school, about 10th grade, I think. And there was a TV repairman at my grandparents' house. And they'd gone to lunch, and I was at my grandparents' that day for some reason. And they had that huge TV in the living room, old school, and the back was off of it. And it was unplugged. I saw that it was unplugged. And it had these suction cups, on the back of the glass tube there. Yeah. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool, suction cup action. So I went to peel one of them off. Anyway, I came to, I'm not kidding. I came to on the other side of the room. And what stopped me was up against the front of the couch. And I remember opening my eyes and knowing that I was over there, and now I'm over here. And I looked, my grandmother was cooking lunch or something in there, and I could see, because there's like an opening there where she was cooking. And I just looked over there, and I was like, did she just see me fly across the room, poltergeist style? And she didn't, apparently. Anyway, so I should have died probably. But anyway, So about that time, that same summer, I think it was, and I had been experimenting, with these radio stations and stuff. I would carry that radio station with me, that little wooden box. Yep. Take it to my grandparents and all that stuff. And so I remember it wasn't long after the TV incident that I had that wire hanging out of like the bedroom and stuff, the spare bedroom at my grandparents' house. And I remember I climbed a ladder. I put my grandfather's thick leather gloves on. I climbed to the top of this ladder with that radio station wire, because my theory, Wayne, was that if I tapped in to that electrical line, that's like now my antenna wire that normally I could just get it just a few feet on either side.
Right.
I'm going to be nationwide, bro. This thing's going to blow up.
Yes.
I would have loved to do a podcast, but this was 1990-ish, 91, whatever.
Yeah.
So I remember standing on that ladder on the summer day, holding that wire, looking at that electrical line going into the house, and thinking back to that lesson I learned just a few weeks before at that TV. And I thought, this may not end well. So I remember disappointed walking down that ladder, holding that wire, thinking, man, I'll never know if that would have worked. They could hear me in Oregon right now if I would just connect this wire. Well, anyway, I find out later, I should have done that, Wayne. I should have done that, because that wire was not an electrical wire. It was just a phone wire, telephone.
Oh, and you would have been early, like AM radio, where they were like,
I should have done that. I would have been, I would have been Christian Slater.
Exactly. The whole world.
Pump up the volume. That's how close I was. But instead, I wussed out. I came down the ladder thinking I had made a smart decision, and only to find out later, standing there talking to my grandfather about something. And he's like, well, so there's a telephone line going in there. And I was like, wait, hold on. What's that line? What's that line?
So I wouldn't have died.
I wouldn't have died. And I never, I never went back to experiment to see if I had missed out, man.
But anyway, here you are.
Yeah, I'm still alive.
You're still alive.
Still accident prone. And honestly, dude, I break electronics. Like if I'm in the same zip code as something electronic, that's one reason I'm surprised this is held steady here, this connection.
I may have noticed the mic arm this morning. The boom. I'm just saying, go on, Keith. It's okay.
Yeah. What he's referring to, if you go back, you'll see that I may have broken a microphone arm at the station.
Yeah, there may have been images of Keith standing there, like holding the mic before the break.
Yeah, when that happened, dude, I'm looking up at the clock and it's 22 after. I'm like, I've got to hold this thing in my lap for 8 more minutes before we go to break. Anyway, but so like if I wear a watch or I'm notorious for cell phones not working after a short period of time. I wonder if it goes back, did I just absorb like all this electricity from that TV? Is it running through me now?
I didn't learn my lessons with electricity that way, but I was in landscaping for years before I became a cop. Long story for a different podcast. But my first lesson was learning what wasn't low voltage wiring, because I was on my knees in the snow thinking it was low voltage wiring.
Oh, no.
Didn't do that twice. Similar to your poltergeist moment. And then the second time was in a Bobcat. It was actually a skid steer because it was New Holland, but same thing. Mm-hmm. And cutting through the backyard, and they were off by about 5 foot where the power line main was going through the ground. Fortunately, rubber tires on that machine. So I'm here to talk to you about it. So yeah, I've had a few lessons as well, the power of electricity.
But see, now you and I had these happen. Like you were working. Yep. I was experimenting, Yours is more noble than me. But you know what we weren't doing? We weren't cooking chicken in NyQuil. We weren't taking risks like that. We weren't eating Tide Pods. Okay. We weren't doing stupid stuff for clicks. Okay. This is the idiocracy ride that we're on, man.
You're right. The chicken and NyQuil one, that gets me. I'm not even sure who wakes up one day and it's like, this seems like a good idea. I mean, maybe Jeffy, but besides him, I don't know who wakes up one day and says this may be a good idea.
No.
Let me.
Anyhow, I don't know if I don't know if my story made sense there. It's been a ride. It's been very little sleep along the way. I'll say that.
Yeah, sure. So how early are you in the studio? Just out of curiosity, you've got to get there probably.
Oh gosh,
5.
Oh no, I wish. Oh, how?
Because you do all your show prep in the morning, right?
Yeah. So no, I work on it 24/7. Honestly, I'm constantly blowing up other producers' emails with videos and images and stuff we need to talk about. But alarm is set for 3. I barely make it that far. Yeah. And if I'm not in the building by 4 a.m., something's wrong. So anyway, but I typically, honestly, I would love it if I could make it to my 3 o'clock alarm, but I don't anymore. And it's really a problem for me. Yeah. So
that's because we're getting older, Keith.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got to talk about real quick At the Mic. So at some point you decide to start a podcast, At the Mic with Keith Malinak, which they can find at themicshow.com.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I will say that talking about politics and the destruction of our way of life really is grating, and it wears you out, man. It really does. So I tried to find this outlet where I didn't have to talk politics and I could just talk to people about their life story. In fact, knowing when this podcast will drop, if people do go to atthemicshow.com, this is breaking news for you. And by then, though, people hopefully will know that coming up on the program is going to be legendary sports announcer Vern Lundquist is going to join me and talk about his story. Now, I'm taking a risk here, man, because these are scheduled for next week. So if these fall through and people go to atthemicshow.com and they're like, where the heck is those conversations that guy talked about? What a liar. Yep. Brian Kilmeade from Fox and Friends is going to join me as well. So those are 2 interviews that I'm going to be recording next week and posting in October. So they should be up there by the time this posts in November.
Correct. Yes. So this will
but there's a lot of great conversations on there. I encourage people to check it out because if they're fans of The Blaze, which is where you know me from, there's a conversation with Glenn Beck up there. There's a conversation with Chad Prather, Jeffy, Pat Gray. If you're familiar with Hillary Kennedy from The Blaze. So there's a lot of personalities that people are already familiar with if you want to hear their life story at themicshow.com.
And I will say that's kind of one of the neat things about it, besides just the whole concept of your show, which is this whole everybody has a story thing, but also being able to hear, especially if people listen to some of the personalities, you really get to see them in a completely different light. Your very first episode, I believe, was with the illustrious Pat Gray. And it was quite interesting listening to that and getting a completely different perspective and kind of his story and stuff, which was quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you checking it out, and I hope other people will as well. But yeah, gonna have a conversation with my kids coming up as well. I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
I interviewed my son for a podcast.
Yeah. And how old is he?
So he's 20. So I did it from the perspective of growing up with a cop for a father. So I wanted to, it was a Father's Day special. We did it last year. And I wanted to know, hey, son, you grew up with your dad going into law enforcement when you were like 10 years old, 9 years old. What was that like? What were your fears, your thoughts, your aspirations, that kind of thing? So,
man, I can't imagine a loved one like going off to war, going out into the streets. That's all I would think about every day, every minute of every day until they walked back home through that door. And I would estimate that it was no different for your family as well.
Absolutely. All right. Final 2 questions.
Bless you guys.
Final 2 questions so I can get you out of here. What's next for your mission?
What's next for me?
Yeah.
What now?
What's next for your mission? What is Keith Malinak doing to make a difference in the world next?
Boy, that's a good question, man. I don't like hard questions. Probably not enough, whatever it is. Honestly.
Do you ever get accused of being a pessimist, Keith?
No, not me. Never. Okay. That's never come up ever.
Oh, just asking.
It comes up like probably every other day in my life from one circle or another. I don't know, man. Just trying to keep the old head above water and, get off to Colorado as often as I can.
That's awesome.
No, as far as making a difference, I'm focused on my kids, man. I really am. It sounds trite, but this world is light years different than it was just a few years ago. And making sure that they have what they need to be successful, that they have the ability to succeed or fail on their own. That's important to me because I have three very different but very awesome young people in my care, and they are slowly but surely going off into this world. And this world is absolutely terrifying on so many fronts. And like we talked about earlier in our conversation, man, the world from our childhood, even though we were, under threat of nuclear annihilation every day, it was a cakewalk compared to what they're going out into every day. And
the actual threat we're in the last 2 weeks, but that's a different story.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to make sure that that they are equipped with everything they need to go out and be successful. And awesome. That's my mission. My kids, really, quite honestly.
My last question that I ask everybody, which will tweak a little bit, because it doesn't have to be specific to law enforcement, but this is your chance to leave a little ray of hope, right? So this is the positive part. So what is the one takeaway, the one thing that we all or law enforcement officers can do that will make a difference in our personal lives? So it's something actionable that we can do that's going to make a difference in our personal lives.
I was really disturbed by a video I saw recently of a female cop in, I think it was Washington State, who made a 60-second TikTok video where she quite brusquely, so rude, how she said, if I pull behind you, if I merge onto a road and I'm behind you, you need to get the F out of the way. She said, any cop can find something to pull you over for. Excuse me. That's not a way to earn trust in the community. And if you see the video, she just says, get the F out of the way if I'm behind you. She says that half a dozen times. And I know that, I trust me, I know that is not representative of your average law enforcement officer.
Absolutely.
My father-in-law is a career police officer. I have enormous respect for this sacrifice of a job that you guys do. I'm very grateful for good cops. That, to reinforce something we talked about earlier, that are literally what stands between us and complete chaos of losing our constitutional rights once and for all. And I would say my message is more, it's not only to officers, but to just Americans. And it kind of goes back to your friend running for sheriff in Douglas County, Colorado, Mr. Hill. When you have good people in those positions, you need to make sure that you tell them that they're appreciated. Encourage them to I don't know if it bugs you guys or not, but like say we'll go to a Rangers game and we'll cross the road, anything that brings me in close proximity to an officer, which hopefully it's something like that and not, although I do have a lead foot and I have had conversations at 4 a.m.
It happens.
Yeah. It's like, look, man, officer, I know that 98% of the people you pull over at 3:30 in the morning, I realize they're up to no good. I promise you I'm going to work. Anyway, so no, but does it become just, I don't know, in one ear and out the other when you say, hey, be safe, stay safe, officer, whatever. You just got to encourage. And that's what I do. I mean, just tell them, just because you have no idea what they have seen, and I would imagine, if you're a police officer, I would imagine that it would be very easy to just assume, especially in the last, 5-6 years, to assume that everyone looks at you as the enemy. And they're wrong, because we look at politicians as the enemy. Okay.
Yes, let's be clear.
All right. So remember, guys and gals with the badge and the gun, you're actually there to protect our rights that these people are seeking to destroy. I'm just saying, you are that last line of defense, and God bless the sheriffs on the local level, like you talked about earlier, that are standing in that breach. But I think as we continue to spiral out of control as a society, I would just encourage officers to really brush up on the Constitution, brush up on what is a lawful order and what isn't. And if we promise to show you respect, and you promise to show respect to our rights, I think, because I'm telling you, man, the people at the top are always trying to divide us. If it's not class warfare, it's race warfare. If it's not race warfare, it's let's separate by age, right? Like, look who's taking all your stuff. It's the old people, We are being divided on every front imaginable. Yeah. Every front imaginable. We need the good officers and the freedom-loving Americans to realize that we both respect the rule of law and the Constitution, and let's realize that we are on the same side. Okay. Anyway, and I want you guys to stay safe out there.
That's awesome. And thank you. And yeah, it truly is a social contract. And I think that young lady you were referring to was let go, which is good, in that viral video. And it's sad, that's a whole nother podcast. We could talk about what leads to someone thinking they ought to put that out on social media. But nonetheless, even though it was her feelings in the moment, certainly doesn't represent everybody. So no, thank you, Keith. And I do think it, the whole be safe thing kind of becomes cliche. Even myself, when I put it out on social media, I kind of feel like, it has that eye roll feeling to it.
Yeah,
but it's true.
What I'm afraid of. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's true though. And there is, to me, it's kind of a recognition that, hey, there is a certain level of danger to you being out there, and you have a target in a marked unit with, your uniform and stuff on. And we certainly do want them to be safe. So Keith, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it. It was a fun conversation. I'm sorry I talked so much though.
Not at all. Hopefully we can do it again someday.
Sounds good, Wayne. Thanks so much, buddy.
Thanks. And that does it for this week's The Interview Room. I hope you really enjoyed it. Another great guest will be with us again next week. We have a great lineup for you here over the next few weeks and on through the rest of the year. So you're definitely not going to want to miss a single episode. We also have Morning Roll Call, which typically comes out on Monday mornings. However, I may change my mind, and who knows? It could come out a different day of the week. But Morning Roll Call, check that out as well. That's just me talking to you, and it gives us a few minutes to go over something, anything from news or something actionable that matters, hopefully, to you. One last favor, please, 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 whatever service you are looking at or whatever service you are watching this on, you're listening to this on, please leave us a rating and review. 5 stars, that would be the appropriate number of stars. If for some reason it's not 5 stars in your opinion, or if it is, tell us why. We would love to hear it. I would love to get your feedback. In fact, I'm going to start reading some of these reviews on the air. I've been looking at some of the ones on Apple Podcast, and thank you for the phenomenal reviews. And thank you all for taking the time to listen to this. I hope you're really enjoying it. You all have a safe week out there, and I will see you next week in the interview room. I will see you next week in Morning Roll Call, but in the meantime, I'll see you on the blue line.